answer some questions that you guys left for me for this finale. So I'm just gonna start with like whichever one is popping up at the top, and then we'll make our way down. So with that, the goat asks, so now that season 2 is behind us, what are you most looking forward to seeing in season 3, and how do you feel about the possibility of a friends to lovers trope relationship between Mark and Eve? I think I said this earlier on that I was like not super into the idea of them being a couple or there being like a romantic interest because I really, really like them as friends. However, the way that they approached it, I think, made me feel a little bit more secure in that becoming a thing, especially like with how Mark and Amber kind of amicably ended their relationship. I'm obviously so devastated for both of them because I do want them to be able to work things out, but I think as of right now, like as it stands, I don't think that that's possible. However, I will also say I don't like I know obviously Eve has feelings for him because future her said that, and she just wanted Mark to either like let her down gently or be like I love you too. So I'm still a bit unsure if Mark has the same feelings for her. I'm not sure. I definitely think that they are great friends, but we'll see. I'm not against it, is what I'm saying. Sorry. What I'm looking forward to in season 3, definitely seeing more of Nolan's, especially here at the end when he was like, I think I miss my wife. Um, I am interested to see like more of his character arc kind of flip back to this, like the human part of him. Even though he's not human, he's a Viltromite. I think that that's probably going to be like the majority of season 3. I would assume is him trying to like atone for what he's done, and so I'm here for it. I definitely want to see that happen. Jarvis asks, "What are your feelings and thoughts on Nolan and Mark as they both grow and changed since season 1? Where would you like for them to go going forward? And your thoughts and the end way Eve confronts Mark at the end of episode 8." So with the Eve and Mark thing, same thing that I mentioned earlier. I could kind of feel it from her, but I'm not sure that Mark feels the same way, but I'm interested to see like if that progresses in any sort of way now that he and Amber have like amicably ended. And my feelings and thoughts with Nolan and Mark is I think it's really interesting and such great writing that they have kind of like shifted both in opposite directions in a way. With Mark obviously taking his first life, and he obviously regrets it. He feels horrible. I'm sure it's gonna like traumatize him moving forward. But Nolan is kind of like moving back into like his humanity, and I think Mark is terrified that he is going to go in the opposite direction now that he has killed somebody. So I'm sure that that's going to be like the majority of season 3 explored, and I'm really excited about that. Great questions. Bolt D asks, other than Mark and Nolan, what do you think of the other Viltrumites introduced thus far, like Anissa, Craig, Thaddeus, Lucian, etc.? I don't have too many opinions on most of them. Anissa is definitely the I'd say the more interesting of them because her reasoning when she was talking to Mark, and obviously they don't want to kill Mark, which is why they left him alive. But I'm curious, like if they feel like the reason they have to keep him alive is because they need him to join them. But not too many more opinions so far. But I just think the Viltrumites, regardless of their reasoning for wanting to cure famine and hunger, like genocide is not the way to do it. They could like work together with humans instead of like wanting to take over and say that they're like the more perfect race, like whatever. So I'm very against what the Viltrumites are doing. I think it's really horrifying and insane. But I'm curious, like if Nolan obviously has a little bit of humanity to him, if these other Viltrumites maybe do also. Not sure. Anissa's the most interesting to me though at this point. Rogue Drone asks, hey Kayla, so I have 2 questions for you. 1, do you think Mark is right for what he did? And 2, who do you ship more with Mark, Eve or Amber? Oh my gosh, the second question's hard. For number 1, I think Mark did lose control in that moment. And sometimes we will do things in situations that our lives are threatened or our family's lives are threatened that we wouldn't necessarily do. I think he definitely hit a little bit of overkill at the end there because he was very clearly dead and he just kind of kept going and kept going and kept going. But I don't think Mark had a choice in that instance, because that he was going to kill. He was going to kill his brother. He was going to kill his mom. And I understand like why Mark is struggling with that, but I personally don't think that he was in the wrong for ending that man's life, unfortunately for him. And obviously he regrets it, as we've seen, because that's like this whole like last half of that episode was just him grieving that, and grieving that like change and like loss of his former self. Like I think he's a different person now in a way, which could be in our favor or maybe not in our favor moving forward into the next season. And then I don't know. I mean, I love Mark and Amber together, and I obviously was devastated that they broke up, but I understand why they did, and I appreciate that the writing felt like natural in that way, and also natural in the way that like Eve from the future has like confessed to Mark that she loves him. So it didn't feel contrived. It didn't feel like messy love triangle-y. It didn't feel like Legend of Korra love triangle. So I'm open to both of those relationships. Bean Dippins says, I have a question for the season 2 finale and a recommendation for how to watch season 3. The question is, what do you make of Nolan's final line, I think I miss my wife? My recommendation for season 3 is watch the first 2 episodes together and also watch the last 2 episodes together. And then someone else, Rogue Drone, agreed. So I will plan to do season 3, episode 1 and 2 together, since you guys asked. And then, of course, like the final 2 will be together, just with the flow of everything. But for YouTube, I might have to split them up. I hope that's okay. I don't know if you guys even watch my YouTube videos, but if you do, thank you. I appreciate the engagement. What I make of the final line is that Nolan does indeed see Debbie and has deeper feelings for Debbie other than just like a pet, as he mentioned in season 1. And I think it's showing that like she and Mark have changed him in a positive way, and that he does like have some humanity in him. So I'm excited to see that explored more with his like atonement arc, as I'll call it. I don't know if he'll actually ever be able to truly atone for what he's done, but he can try. So, okay. Jose asks, do you have any predictions / hopes for where Oliver's character goes? I mean, I'm assuming Oliver in season 3 is probably going to grow up pretty quickly and also develop powers. So I'm hoping that maybe Oliver will be like just an aid to us. Like if he has like crazy powers, like Viltromite powers, I'm hoping that he can like help Mark and Nolan defeat the Viltrum Empire. That's my one hope. And Alan, of course, because Alan was able to make Anissa bleed, which was a huge feat. Like Mark wasn't even able to do that. So I think with all of them together, we might stand a chance against the more powerful Viltrumites, but we'll see. Photon Punk asks, can Omni-Man be forgiven? Can he ever make amends? That's a tough one for me. I think Nolan can atone for what he's done, but I don't necessarily think that will mean forgiveness and erasure of what he's done up to this point. But it's kind of similar to how I feel about the arc of Endeavor in My Hero, obviously like on a much smaller scale than what Nolan has done in this universe. But sometimes when you're seeking out atonement, it's just to help aid and like not further push back like the cause of what Mark is doing here, which is to save the world from the Viltrum Empire. So I think that he can help with that without necessarily erasing the past, because I mean, once you make decisions like that, you can't bring back all of those people that you've killed, right? So I think he can atone, but I don't know that he'll ever be truly forgiven by me or Mark or anyone in this series for that matter. It's a great question though. I love talking about that. Mr. Sword Guy 64 asks, do you think Mark was referring to Angstrom, himself, or both with the line, I thought you were stronger? I think he was just referring to himself, and it was in the sense of, I thought you were strong enough to not turn out like your dad and kill somebody. I thought you had more strength to be able to fight and defeat people without needlessly killing them or harming them. And I think it was just more Mark to himself, not to Angstrom necessarily. Okay. Ryan JSW asks also, oh, you asked 2 questions. Sorry. I'll start with your first one. It's like showing up below this. So Ryan JSW asks, since this season really visits the moral dilemma of killing so often, how would you deal with a villain like Angstrom or even Omni-Man? Does everyone deserve a second chance? Can everyone turn over a new leaf? Is it worth gambling other lives just to find that out? I think that if I was in Mark's position, I feel like my only option at that point would have been to kill him, because Mark tried for the entirety of the episode almost to speak to him, to help him understand. But I think Angstrom was like way too far gone with just everything that was going on in his brain. Obviously, he was like mixing up universes. What happened to him in that accident affected his mental capacity and his mental space. So I think that Mark was really, it was either see his mom die and his brother die, or kill this guy. I mean, I think sometimes there's no other way to stop somebody who's so hell-bent on killing you. So in that instance, I think that I probably would have had to do what Mark did, but I do think Mark lost control, and obviously he regrets it. And in terms of like Omni-Man, does everyone deserve a second chance? I think everyone can attain atonement, but not necessarily forgiveness. So I think that Omni-Man will help defeat the Viltrum Empire, but that won't erase everything that he's done up until this point. And I don't think that it should. I think that he should live with the mistakes that he made and all the lives that he took in the process of that. That's a great question. Also, this is another question from Ryan JSW. Is Cecil a bad guy? My take is that he's not. He's one of the only people saving the planet in an effective manner. Giving terrible people a way to atone by saving people is better than killing them, in my opinion. Kind of drove me nuts how Mark couldn't see this, although forgiveness is the hardest thing to do. And the goat responded, we can't forget that Mark is just an 18, 19-year-old kid with the fate of the entire world resting on his shoulder, while also being traumatized by so many things by the end of season 2. Yeah, I see both sides of that, and I don't think Cecil's a bad guy necessarily. I'm inherently like mistrustful of people in positions of power like Cecil is. So I think some of the things that he is doing, while it is like for the greater good of the world, morally it's corrupt. Morally it's not okay. Like taking dead soldiers and like taking away their autonomy and creating like killing machines in a way. Because those people they're dead. They can't speak for themselves. And kind of the same thing with Donald, even though he did reveal at the end that Donald was the one that wanted his memory taken away. So I see both sides of it. I think Cecil is inherently a good person in this universe, but I think that he is morally corrupt in some ways as well, which I don't know. I'm sure that'll be explored a little bit more in the next season. And I agree with the goat. I think Mark is in a really interesting position, being a teenager still and having the entire fate of the world on him. So, I mean, how could any of us really react in those scenarios regarding like Cecil and what he's done? So, good questions though. I really appreciate that. Kyle asks, would you be able to have a relationship with a superhero boyfriend / husband like Debbie, or would it be too much for you like Amber? I think it depends on the scenario, because of course like Debbie and Nolan had a kid together, and I think having children together will change your perspective and also change like how much of your threshold you have for being in this like complicated relationship. For me personally, I think it would be difficult. I would probably like be more in the camp of Amber, of not necessarily being upset with Mark, of course, but I think it would be really hard. It would be really hard to feel like we're in two entirely different worlds, especially with Amber not having any powers. I think if she had powers, it would be different, of course. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. Jamie asked, let's see. Jamie asked, how did you think it looked when Mark killed Engstrom? The episode got a lot of hate from how it looked. I don't know what that means. Oh, people are responding to each other. Okay, I'm gonna read like all of you guys' comments because I think you're all like maybe disagreeing with each other. Um, People are saying it's like the lowest rated finale. The blood dripping off of Mark. Um, okay, I mean, I'm not sure what the discourse is because I obviously haven't. I've been avoiding like everything online about this episode. So once I finish season 3, I'll probably do like a deep dive and see like people's opinions on episodes, like ratings of episodes and stuff like that. So I'm not quite sure. So I don't know how to answer that question. Sorry. Um, okay. Joe asked, I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4 more questions. Joe asked, future Adam Eve told Mark she loved him. Do you think Mark should tell current Adam Eve what happened? How do you feel about the reveal? I'm going to start with that, actually. I'm going to start with that one. I think here at the end, Mark was going to mention it to her, of course, and then chickened out. I do think that for me personally, I feel like Mark doesn't feel the same way about Eve, but I could see them maybe working out sometime like in the future. But if he tells her, it is going to change like the timeline because future Adam Eve wasn't supposed to tell him that, right? Like, so now he's got this in his brain of this potential romance budding, and that's going to change like how he moves forward. That's going to change his decision making moving forward when it comes to Eve. So I think that could potentially be a bad thing in this next season. So personally, I wouldn't tell her unless I felt the same way. Like if I was Mark and I like just went through this breakup with the love of my life, and now this other person who's been like such a good friend to me comes from the future and says I love you. I mean, what am I supposed to do with that information, right? So I think it will have the wheels spinning for him, and I think it's going to be a conflict for him next season. But I don't necessarily think now is the right time to have that conversation with her, just with everything that's just happened. Great question, though. Joe also asks, how do you feel about the reveal that certain characters weren't actually killed in the fight with Lizard League? Are you relieved that they're alive, or does it cheapen the experience of deaths in the show? I could see where people would feel that it does cheapen the deaths, but for me personally, with Kate and just her power and how often that she's been killed with her power over the years, I think it's reasonable that she would only use a body double for the entirety of this season. So I'm happy that she's alive, and I think that her reasoning for it is solid. So I don't personally feel like it cheapens to the death of her. I'm actually relieved that she's alive. Nolan seems to regret his actions at the end of the first season, and he thinks he misses his wife. Which wife, Nolan? Do you think he is redeemable? And if so, what would it take? I think that which wife? Definitely, I think he's referring to Debbie specifically. But rest in peace to his other wife as well. Do I think he's redeemable? I don't think he's gonna ever fully be redeemable because of everything and the death and destruction and everything that he's done up until this point. But I do think that he can help alleviate some of what Viltrum is doing and even aid Mark and team to save Earth, which wouldn't necessarily be redeeming, but I think he can at least stop more of this from happening and moving forward. And I think it's like really the least he can do at this point. But I do appreciate that he is having these like very like human thoughts, these thought processes and these emotions that are kind of like bubbling up for him. Let's see. And then, let's see. Joe also said, loving the show and your reactions. Alan the Alien is awesome. Can't wait for you to start season 3. I love Alan. He's great. And I'm so excited to start season 3, but also kind of scared. Okay. Ray asks, at this point in the story, who are your favorite characters / storylines and why? Also, how are you feeling? I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling conflicted, but like a little like nugget of hope in my mind right now because I think that we're slowly like building up this team of people who can take on the Viltrumites. So that will help. My favorite character in the show is Mark, and I just think he's actually up there with like one of my favorite characters of all time, which is Deku from My Hero Academia. I think he is so special and so sweet and so kind and caring, and he's been through so much, and I just like want to pull him out of this universe and like put him in like a shoujo anime. Like I just need him to be out of this world. I have a lot of favorite characters, but Mark is like definitely like number one for me. I love Eve. I love Debbie. And there's so many characters that are so great, but those are probably like my top three characters in this series. And I think Eve, it's more that I am very similar to her and I relate to her on a different level. So like my love for her character is a bit different than like my love for like Mark. But so many great characters, and I think they're all so well written, and specifically Mark, I think is amazing. And then two more questions. Joseph K asked, "Hey Gayla, now that you finished up with season 2, how do you think Mark's action of fully embracing his rage for a moment and killing Angstrom will impact his life going forward? Do you think he'll end up going down a darker path and trying to keep up his moral values, etc.?" I think that because Mark has done this and the grieving that we've seen him experience, even in this last bit, especially in that last scene where he is like flying through the air and just like having these like just screaming and like having these like flashbacks of all of that stuff that just happened to him, I think it's actually going to make him one like reel it in more, I think, because he doesn't want to feel that feeling again. So I don't think he's going to go down a dark path. I think he's going to be more careful, if anything. And now we've seen that like in some ways like this mental block is what was holding him back from like reaching his full potential. So I think a little bit of rage is okay as long as you can reel it back in. And I think that if he is like, and we've seen it a few times throughout this season. I can't think of specific episodes, but even in season 1, we've seen him kind of freak out like that a few times, right? And so this time it just like went too far. So I think if anything, he's gonna like be able to control it a bit more so he doesn't go down a dark path. I can't imagine he would go down a dark path. I don't think that is like him as a character. But I am interested to see the other Marks in the other universes. I'm sure we're probably going to get to maybe see that moving forward. Maybe, I don't know. But I'm curious to see how they ended up in that situation where they were needlessly taking lives. Final questions from Adam. Not sure how much of a fan you are of superhero stories in general, but in light of the finale, do you have thoughts on no-kill rules? Like, do you mean like Mark having a rule for himself to not kill people, or just like superheroes in general? I think that if I was a superhero, I would also try not to kill people if I didn't have to. But in these instances where someone that I really love and care about's life is on the line, or even if my life is on the line, I think that can push us to do things that we wouldn't typically do, like even kill. But I think unless we're put in situations like that, we don't really know like what our flight or fight response is going to be. So I think it really just depends, and I'm not against no kill, and I think that like Mark is obviously a good kid and a good dude, and like why kill if you don't have to, right? But I think in that instance there wasn't really another choice. So that's just my opinion on that, and maybe that will come out more in the next season. And then, sorry, Adam, you continued before I even finished reading this, but the most famous one is obviously Batman, but lots of stories deal with it. Mark is obviously struggling with his feelings on killing Angstrom, but he had no problem killing thousands of Sequids in that plotline. And it's not like there's any prison that could hold Angstrom with his dimension powers anyways, but also, if Mark were to consider himself the judge and executioner, is he that different from Nolan? I think he's much different from Nolan, for sure. But I can understand the dilemma with that, and I think it's going to continue to plague Mark into the next season, which could be in our favor or it could potentially fuck things up entirely. And then you said, Adam said, I don't have a strong opinion either way at the moment. I just think it's an interesting question to think about for superhero stories as a whole, as well as specifically for Mark. Yeah, I think I see it a lot in superhero media, but like specifically I think about like My Hero Academia, but then spoiler if you haven't finished the end of My Hero Academia, but Deku does end up killing one of the villains. And he didn't want to. He tried to think of every other sort of way that he could do it. And he couldn't. And in the end, that was the only way. So I think in some specific circumstances, the no-kill thing doesn't actually make sense because you don't know what you're going to do unless you're in that situation. And if your life is on the line and it's me or you, it's probably going to be you, right? I don't know. Lots to think about. I'm not super well versed in other superhero stuff like Batman. I'm not really familiar with, so maybe I'll do like a little deep dive on that too. Yeah, and that's all of the questions that I had. Definitely feel free to drop more down below. This is a live drop, of course, so we'll be chatting kind of as I'm watching. But this was such a fabulous season. Lots of feelings kind of swirling around. Very, very excited, but also nervous because there are still angstroms in other universes, but I don't know if he still has those powers or not. And I don't know if like the marks or any of the characters in the other universes are going to be able to like maybe come into this world too. I feel like anything is possible, so we'll see. But this was great, and this is the last thing I'm watching today. I'm going to do some self-care this afternoon, and I will see you guys next time for the season 3 premiere of Invincible. Bye!